Right here.
All right.
Morning. How are y'all?
Hi, Nicole. Good morning. Who's asking questions?
They're all.
Okay.
It's a gaggle.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So tell us what happened in there.
So basically, we've never worked before this judge, so Ms. Andrews and myself and the rest of the team, we wanted to meet the judge and talk to him about timeline. And that's really what we were doing, and also setting up for our access for the discovery. Because I think if you were in the courtroom, you heard they have somewhere around 235 body-worn cameras. Every officer involved in the investigation is obligated to record, their involvement, and we'll be required to review that. So we were just kind of setting up timeline. It looks like the case will go before a grand jury here either the end of June or July. And then once they indict Mr. Oropeza, then we'll come back for arraignment. And of course, at that time, he'll enter pleas of not guilty just routinely.
Have you spoken with your client?
We have,
Can
of
you
course.
Tell us about that.
Not going to talk about that, but
Yeah.
we've talked to him, and we're working on his case.
I mean, basically, we let them know what to expect, what procedures, the format. Obviously, you all understand we're not going to discuss the particulars about, what we talk about relative to the case. But generally speaking, he has a good understanding of, what's going on and what the procedure will be from this point forward and the time frame and things of that nature.
You talk about his general demeanor.
Concerned, for sure. I think you'll find out as this case goes on that he was an extremely well-liked
Neighbor.
person, neighbor, and had helped almost everyone that lived around him, including the family next door, the victims' families. They had an ongoing relationship and got along for a fairly long period of time. So
We've gotten a lot of, I guess, calls of support online and also to our offices. A lot of people cared about him and thought highly of him, and we're so.
It wasn't an isolated instance where, I know it was portrayed early on as just a random mass shooting. There has been an ongoing, they were friends to begin with, neighbors and friends. So it started out where he would often help them and provide assistance because he was a tradesman. And so anybody in the neighborhood that needed electrical work or plumbing work or anything of that nature, Francisco was always made himself available. So we were unaware of this at first, and then we found out, people contacting both my office and Lisa's office, that there were a lot of people calling us in support, although they didn't understand, what could have happened to cause, such a severe outcome. But we're learning a lot more every day about that evening, and the initial story about asking him not to shoot his gun in the backyard because a baby was sleeping is probably not going to prove to be accurate. An accurate version of the events. Not saying that
Nothing is ever
to
quite that
justify.
simple, right? And I think that we can use our common sense and know that as a reason is not really going to be accurate.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding out, is that was not the reason.
Yeah.
And it's much more complicated and much different a picture than that original witness statement.
I mean, their relationship.
Can you the microphone?
Sure. Their relationship, I believe, started to go downhill when the victim's dogs got into our client's yard and killed his
Animals.
wife's sheep. It started out with killing a sheep, then they had words about that, and subsequent to that, the dogs got out again and killed the chickens. Remember, this is kind of a rural area, and they had Francisco and his wife had animals in the backyard that they kept, and so the neighbor relationship started to go downhill as a consequence of those incidents.
Has Mr. Oropeza expressed any regret as to what happened?
We're not going to discuss
Anything he says.
anything that he
How
says
has
at this time.
media coverage affected or will affect your case? Media
How
coverage.
how will it affect it?
Uh-huh.
Well,
Well,
we-
I hope
good.
it'll start, I guess, becoming a little more than one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Obviously, the focus at the initial outset was finding and arresting him. But beyond that, I hope that the story will be told in a more nuanced way that is more accurate. But as we gather all the evidence from the district attorney and start looking at everything and completing our investigation, we'll have much more information.
You guys thinking about any like change of venue or anything like that?
At this time, that's
Too
not
early.
really on the table. Let's just say that we always consider that, but based on the locale we're in, the options, sometimes you have to watch what you ask for. Let me put it that way. And so we're very comfortable up here. We like how we've been received by the sheriff's department, by the district attorney's office, and by the clerk's office up here, all of the staff that we have to come in contact with and work with on a day-to-day basis. They've provided us access, and we've talked about procedures and how things can work more smoothly. And I wanted to address one other thing. As time goes on and we appear in court, I think as we do more discovery or review more discovery, but also continue our investigation, I think a lot more facts are going to come out. And we don't blame the media at this point, because the portrayal for this story initially was based on one of the residents of that household where the victims were found telling his version of events. And we certainly wouldn't expect him to go in any detail that would shine any kind of a negative light on his own activities. So that being said, we think as time goes on, and the media shows up and they hear what's going on in court and they follow the case, I think the dynamics will change a little bit, as far as the relationship with all the parties and how the events that occurred that day leading up to this.
Mr. Rosso, what is the challenge, especially in this case? You have a Mexican national, a person that was here illegally, that he had access to a gun, and because these incidents, prior incidents, it turns out very violent, but everybody, like you mentioned, says that he was different, he was the handyman that everybody likes. What is the challenge to
Well, it's always
represent a person with a background?
I mean, obviously we ask the public to consider all of the facts, not just hone in on the fact that he was undocumented. Look, I think early on there were some comments made by different politicians about the victims being undocumented. We look beyond that. Everybody here just wants to do their job. He's going to get the same quality of representation from Miss Andrews and myself, and Miss Funes Baker, collectively, that regardless of his status. So it's a challenge for us because of the perception by the public, and obviously you can't help turning on the TVs and see stories about current gun violence, and I think this was portrayed initially as a mass shooting in line with some other events that were occurring, and I think this is going to end up being a different kind of situation. It's still a case involving gun violence, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, but it's not just a random act from an individual who goes into a facility or a store or church circumstance and just starts shooting. There's a history behind all these parties involved.
The district attorney's office has alluded to possibly upgrading charges to capital murder in this case. Are y'all prepared for that? I mean, obviously that hasn't happened yet, but
Yeah,
No,
that's
we anticipate
completely
that.
what
Yeah.
we expect.
Yeah. I mean, let me say this. When I first saw news breaking on this case and heard that they filed 5 charges of murder, I mean, that surprised me, because this is clearly just the child being under 10. Miss Andrews will tell you, just the child under 10 itself is a capital murder. But anytime in Texas you have multiple victims or multiple complainants, the law only requires 2 complainants out of a single criminal episode would be a capital murder. So, yeah, we anticipated that. That's why we received the call. I mean, Judge Wells called me, and we spoke in length about the implications of it being a capital murder with, potential for death. And we
every criminal practitioner
Yeah.
that's been doing this
Yeah.
for any length of time knows that this is a capital murder case where the death penalty is potentially on the table. And so in those circumstances, you have to have certain lawyers who handle those kind of cases with specific qualifications. And so that's why we're on the case.
And-
We anticipate this.
And let
Yes.
me add, I didn't mean by any chance that I wasn't insinuating that he was charged improperly. In meeting with the district attorney's office here, they needed to move quickly, and they're not a direct file county. In other words, they can't just, bring a case to grand jury or automatically file their charges. They have procedures. Their grand juries don't meet as often. So in an abundance of caution, what they do is they want to get charges in place to hold an individual, which they did, and now they'll make their determination. In speaking with the DA's office today, they were clear. We're waiting for more of the reports to come in before we even take the case to grand jury, because they want to make sure that they seek what they believe to be, the proper indictment. And we've worked with these prosecutors before, so like I said, we will have open dialogue. They've made themselves available, and we'll continue to work together.
Do you anticipate any federal charges in connection to the illegal possession of a firearm by an undocumented person?
I don't, but that's not my call. I think right now the DA's office in San Jac County has enough on their plate to handle for a while, and I'm not sure the feds. I don't see any benefit to them pursuing a separate weapons charge.
The punishment range
Yeah.
for a capital murder is obviously
Yeah.
very severe, and it makes the federal charges, I think, pale. So I can't imagine
I think
that
that
they
would be
do
a
that.
waste of federal resources at this point, to think that. But
That would be a political decision,
Yeah.
not a legal decision. So, no, I don't anticipate that.
Anything that you can share according to your client, what happened exactly? that
No,
day?
no.
no, but thank you for asking.
I would imagine not in the days afterwards either, during the 4 days, anything you can tell us?
So we haven't had the benefit yet of reviewing his statement to the police. We've, again, the district attorney's office has kind of filled us in on, some of the particulars, but we can't really comment on what he even told the police at this point.
Are y'all even able to talk to his wife? Because she's in custody, I think, over in Montgomery County.
Can't.
Are y'all able to talk to her? at all?
She's represented by a lawyer, and so any communication that we had with her would have to go through her attorney.
And have you talked to her attorney?
I don't want to get into
Yeah,
the
not-
specifics. Yeah.
What additional discovery will you be seeking between now and the next court date?
Well, the law says that we're entitled to all discovery. So everything that they have, we have, and I fully anticipate they're going to share everything with us.
Yeah.
These prosecutors are very above board, very professional. We've known them for a very long time. So every bit of evidence that they have, we will review and get. So
And we've actually had conversations about, they're open to anything we may discover during our investigation, because they want to make a full and informed decision. So, this is not a situation where anybody's going to hide the ball. It's a very difficult case. It's an unfortunate case. It's sad. No one wins in this situation. And you have both the DA's office and the defense attorneys trying to figure out how does a situation where people are friends, this is your neighbor, how does it get to this point? And so that's what we're working through.
but as collegial as we all are,
Yeah.
Anna and I obviously have a job to do, and we're going to vigorously and zealously represent Mr. Oropesa.
Okay.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you just say your name and spell it for us?
Sure.
Lisa Andrews, Andrews.
Anna Funes Baker, ANAFUNES-BAKER.
And Anthony Osso, Anthoy OSSO. Okay.
Just by any chance, anybody of you want to make a statement in Spanish?
If you
Anna,
can ask
you
a
want to?
question, she will. Or if you ask a question, she'll make one. Just don't. I'm gonna step
¿Qué
out.
fue lo que sucedió hoy y qué nos pueden compartir?
Lo que sucedió hoy es nada más que el juez quiere saber cómo va a proceder el caso, cómo tiempos que necesitamos. Es muy no hemos ni siquiera recibido ninguno de los reportes. El juez nos dijo que vamos a regresar en agosto. El caso tiene que ser presentado ante un gran jurado y eso es lo que estamos esperando.
Ustedes, los abogados, comentaban de que este no es el caso que se ha pintado, no es la misma versión que dicen las autoridades. ¿Nos podría explicar usted un poquito de lo que se comentó?
Hemos recibido muchas llamadas, hemos recibido mucho testimonio de muchos miembros de la comunidad sobre la relación entre Francisco y sus vecinos. Lo único que podemos decir es que las cosas no es como las pintaron, como en un principio. Hay mucho más que va a salir a la luz y es muy temprano en esta investigación para saber qué realmente pasó esa noche.
Usted decía que ellos tenían una relación, que eran amigos y que aparentemente todo empezó, las quejas, porque el animal se iba a la yarda. ¿Nos podría explicar?
Lo que sabemos hasta ahorita es que eran amigos. Francisco y su esposa tenían animales en su casa. Esos animales fueron atacados por los perros de los vecinos en varias ocasiones y eso empezó a deteriorar la relación.
¿Ustedes están listos para que esos cargos aumenten y es posible que se lleguen a cargos masivos que lo podrían llevar a la pena de muerte?
Eso es algo que llevamos preparados desde un principio, es por lo que tiene los abogados que tiene. Tiene 3 abogados, es lo que anticipábamos desde un principio.
¿Cómo está su primo?
Él está bien.
¿Preocupado?
Preocupado, claro. ¿Quién no lo estaría?
Una cosa más, si hay alguien con información sobre este caso, por favor llama los
Comuníquese.
3 con la información. Quiero hablar con alguien que tiene información. Gracias.
Gracias.
Take care.
Thank you guys.
Drive safe. Travel.
Are y'all ready for us?
Yeah.
Come on up.
Can we
Man.
do Spanish first?
You bet.
So you
Hey.
want to do it in Spanish?
So this guy is gonna. This is Rob Freer, my first assistant. Rob is fluent in Spanish, so we can do portion of it in Spanish as well. Y'all just
We'll do English first.
okay. Fair. I appreciate y'all setting up in the shade this time, so I don't have to wear my shades during it. So appreciate that very
You
much.
look so cool when you wear your shades, though.
Well, you gotta fake it till you make it. I've never been accused of being that cool, but
First name, last name spelled out, please.
you
English
bet.
title.
Todd, Todd, Dillon, Dillon. I'm the elected district attorney of San Jacinto County. This is Rob Freer, ROB, FREYER, first
Correct.
assistant district attorney, San Jacinto County.
Just tell us what happened today in court.
So basically, this was a status meeting. Okay, this wasn't a hearing where there was a lot of evidence being put on. This is a preliminary hearing, just getting an idea of where we're going to go. The defense is going to have to. They're going to need certain things from the judge. Most of these things are going to be administrative. That's just allowing them to conduct their own investigation. So that's a lot of that is what took place today.
You talked about just the difficulty of bringing this before a grand jury. I think just because of the sheer amount of evidence. I think you said calling it like drinking from a fire hose.
That's
basically.
exactly right. So we had 225 sworn law enforcement personnel on the ground, running through 3 counties: San Jacinto, Liberty, and Montgomery. These guys all have their own support staff and everything like that. There is a lot of evidence that was generated by this. Now, there's going to be certain amounts of that a certain amount of that evidence is not going to be material. A body cam of a guy who's sitting in a parking lot for 3 hours may not be important. But Mr. Orpeza's legal team, they're very diligent, they're very professional, and they're going to want to go through all of that so they can say that they've investigated every bit of this case, and that's absolutely what we want. Don't get us wrong. If a don't ever think that a prosecutor wants an attorney who's not diligent and is not good at their job. It makes the process much better. Nobody wants a case, regardless of how it's resolved, to be in appeals for the next 20 years. I'm confident with this legal team that Mr. Orpeza has, they'll do a very diligent investigation, and they will be fierce advocates for Mr. Orpeza in the courtroom.
Is your office prepared financially to take on a death penalty case? I think the last one you guys had was more than 20 years ago.
No office, I think, is financially prepared to do that. It's a lot of money. I think someone once said that the most successful wars rarely pay for themselves. Doing what's right is rarely the cheapest option. But that's one of the reasons that we're going to maintain an open dialogue with Mr. Orpeza's legal team. If there is mitigation evidence out there that suggests that we need to go a different route, that's something we can certainly look into. That's one of the benefits of maintaining a collegial atmosphere, even though we are adversaries in the courtroom, is that if there is information out there that says the best ends of justice would not be met by doing so, that will be something we review. We can only make that determination when we feel like we've received all the information in and make a final determination on that case. So it's a little preemptive to say that.
And what do you think the anticipated cost could be?
I can't even wager a guess at that. Due process in the United States, it's never been something that's been cost efficient. And it's because one of the most important things that we do. Understand that a defense needs to have the amount of money to make sure that this person, when their liberty is being taken away, that they have every resource, and this person had every benefit of due process. It'll be expensive either way. If we do go forward, then the state may require experts. They may require additional investigations, maybe even out of this country. There's a lot of expenses that may be involved. The deciding point is whether it serves the ends of justice, whether this is a just result. At the end of the day, Rob and I's duties are dictated by the Code of Criminal Procedure, and that's to see that justice is done. It's not to get an X number of years on the sentence. It's not a certain result from a case. It's to see that justice is done. And we're only going to be able to make a determination whether we get there once we've been able to see everything. So I couldn't tell you how much it would cost.
When could charges be upgraded to capital murder?
So the final charging decision will be once this case goes to a grand jury. Okay. At the very beginning, we may have been a little too optimistic about getting in all of the information necessary to make a determination in this case. Our next grand jury in this county meets on May 31st. I do not believe that we will probably receive all of the information in by that time, but again, I guess we've got 2 weeks to find out. But at this point, it's not looking like it'll go to the grand jury by the end of this month. Okay. Any other questions?
Can you talk a little bit about the case with the other gentleman who was charged in San Jacinto County, Casillas?
Yes. Okay.
Any updates or anything like that?
My understanding is he's now been charged with hindering apprehension of a felon. DPS-CID special agents filed that charge based off their investigation. There may or may not be a federal case forthcoming on him. That is up to a different group of people. That would be up to the Southern District U.S. Attorney's Office, not my office. So I couldn't really say whether there are federal charges pending. But he does have a hindering apprehension case. He does have an attorney appointed on that case. He has not yet been indicted. Same reasons. We haven't received all the information yet to make an educated decision on whether that's the case, those are the charges we want to go on, or there's more charges that are appropriate.
Can you share details about that charge? Why that was filed?
I'm sorry, I can't really go into details at all. Like I said, I don't want to do anything that would be considered pretrial publicity that could tamper with potential jurors out there. Yes, sir.
Is this a San Jacinto or Polk County case with the hindering?
The hindering is going to be in San Jacinto County. So again, As some of y'all may know, being out there in Trails End, it's a very weird little sliver of San Jacinto County that goes out there. It's surrounded by 2 other counties. With criminal acts, the jurisdiction that's going to be prosecuted on is going to depend on where the acts were committed. In this case, the investigation indicated that those acts were committed in San Jacinto County. So that's where we're at right now.
This is involving like the first night of the manhunt?
Like I said, I can't really go into the details of that.
And the wife, Mr. Oropeza, is her case going to be moved here to San Jacinto County?
Well, I believe at this point she's actually been filed on in Montgomery County. So my understanding is the acts that took place that led to her case had to deal with possibly being related to the house in Cut and Shoot where Mr. Oropeza was apprehended. So those facts may actually wind up being prosecuted in Montgomery County. That's where Cut and Shoot's located.
And the new hindering apprehension charge, that was for Mr. Domingo
Castilla. Correct. Yes, sir.
Has Mr. Oropeza expressed any regret over the circumstances?
I can't go into any statements that he's made, unfortunately. No, sir. Okay. Any questions for my colleague in Spanish?
Yes.
Step in front of the microphone, Rob.
Caballero, ¿nos podría decir qué fue lo que sucedió en corte y qué viene a hacer futuro?
Pues había una audiencia en frente del juez en lo que los abogados del fiscal del Oropeza pidió dinero y resources, como se llama, para continuar su investigación acerca de este caso, la defensa de él. Y nosotros recibimos otra fecha, la próxima cita en corte será el 10 de agosto de este año. Entre ahora y ese día, nosotros, señor Dillon y yo, nosotros vamos a presentar el caso a un gran jurado aquí en el condado de San Jacinto y ellos lo van a determinar el nivel de ofensa que vamos a tener.
¿Ustedes están buscando los cargos máximos en este caso?
Por eso, claro que sí. No será una sorpresa si hacemos eso, pero nosotros lo vamos a presentar todas sus opciones a ellos para que ellos sepan lo que los alternativos son.
La defensa está diciendo de que la situación como sucedió el hecho no es como se ha conocido hasta este momento, que supuestamente hay evidencia. ¿Cómo se prepara? ¿Qué dicen ustedes?
Nosotros vamos a esperar un comentario acerca de lo que sucedió entre esas personas antes del asesinato. Nosotros esperamos para que un juicio le pueda oír lo que pasaron. Hay muchos rumores que está pasando al lado de calle y del Instagram y de Internet. Y nosotros, el señor Dillon y yo, no estamos seguros lo que es la verdad, lo que no es la verdad. Nosotros no sabemos. Nosotros vamos a investigar todo y para asegurar, como él dijo a ustedes, que nosotros vamos a buscar justicia, ¿okay? Un resultado justo para todo. Y ese señor Oropeza lo merece. Cada persona que está cargado con un nivel de ofensa así merece un nivel de proceso. Él tiene derechos y nosotros, el señor Dillon y yo, lo vamos a asegurar que lo tenga.
¿Cuál es el reto, señor fiscal, en este caso? What is the challenge when it comes about so many?
¿Dónde quiero empezar eso? Hay tantos problemas de hacer un caso así. Porque si tenemos juicio de asesinato capital, ustedes saben que será dos partes de juicio, la culpabilidad y el castigo. Y hay otras cosas que nosotros tenemos que aprovechar en frente del juicio acerca de, en inglés, factores de mitigación y otras cosas, factores agravantes, factores de muchas cosas que será aprovechado si tenemos juicio.
¿Qué es lo que sigue en este caso? Él va a tener una audiencia, pero ustedes también tienen que presentar el caso al jurado indagatorio, el grand jury. So, hay muchas cosas que van a pasar de aquí al 10 de
Es
agosto.
el gran jurado.
Sí.
Nosotros, como dijo el señor Dillon a ustedes, tenemos fecha ahora de 31 de mayo para la próxima gran jurado, pero nosotros no estamos seguros todavía si vamos a tener toda la información para hacer una presentación ese día. Es posible que tendríamos que esperar hasta el próximo mes, en junio, para presentarse formal al gran jurado.
Están en la etapa de discovery, todavía reuniendo, gathering.
Como dijo el señor Dillon a ustedes, sí, hay tantos investigadores, hay tantas agencias del policía que estaban envueltos de este caso, estaban trabajando en este caso. La mayoría era de la busca de él cuando él estaba huyendo de la policía, cuando estaba escondido a él. Pero lo que dice Todd es que nosotros tenemos que obtener todos los videos, todos los reportes de ofensa para que pueda pasar todo eso a los abogados de oro peso de la defensa.
Este caso puede tomar años. Justice is not going to come within a week.
No sé, no, sí, estamos seguros que no pensamos que nosotros vamos a resolver este caso este año. Me imagino que lo puede esperar al 2024, pero no estamos seguros. Nosotros vamos a proceder lo más rápido, pero lo más completo que posible. Where we go from here, de hoy en el futuro.
¿Han hablado con las familias de las víctimas?
Unos dos, sí.
¿Qué los han dicho?
Están tan tristes. Tenía que mover unos de los cuerpos a Honduras para que se pueda tener ¿cómo se dice? Un entierro para allá. Yo sé que había 2, pero el resto yo no sé. 4 que fue llevado para allá para ser enterrado. Y ellos son tristes. Ustedes estaban para acá esa tarde cuando ocurrió eso y estaba llorando el esposo de una de las víctimas que estaba para acá. Y él estaba en casa cuando ocurrió eso. Pues era una tragedia tan grande, tan triste todo. Y yo tengo dolor de corazón acerca de todo lo que sufrieron a ellos en ese caso. Una tragedia tan grande.
La defensa nos dijo hoy que este era un sujeto bueno, que ayudaba a sus vecinos, que si necesitaban arreglos de electricidad, de plomería, él estaba allí. ¿Qué dicen sus clientes? ¿Quién era este sujeto?
No puedo compartir lo que ha dicho porque yo no he platicado con ellos acerca de eso. Yo no sé todavía. Nosotros no tenemos la oportunidad, por supuesto, de platicar a él porque él tiene abogado allá en la cárcel. Nosotros vamos a investigar todo, ¿ok? Para asegurar que nosotros sabemos lo más que posible. Yo no sé cómo era vecino, yo no sé cómo era ahora mismo, pero nosotros vamos a saber. We'll know. Nosotros vamos a saber qué clase de hombre era.
En sus años de experiencia, este caso, ¿qué significa para usted?
Es lo más peor que yo le he visto. In terms of cuando piensa de los números de víctimas, tuve un caso en el condado de Harris que había 4 personas matadas, pero nunca he visto eso. Ni Todd tampoco. Hemos visto una tragedia tan grande. La escena era una pesadilla. No sé cómo se dice eso.
¿Era una verdadera masacre?
Era una masacre. La evidencia, todo el mundo sabe eso. Yo no digo nada que le puede construed as pre-trial publicity, porque todo el mundo sabe que era una tragedia. ¿Cómo se dice? Le voy a decir que era tragedia.
¿Las autoridades mexicanas se han comunicado para ayudar?
Con nosotros todavía no, pero nosotros haremos. Nosotros vamos a hacer eso. Vamos a platicar con ellos.
Él legal or that's enough, having that lawyer from the state? I mean, I'm talking on,
Right now, I'm with you, Daisy.
yes, on the fact that he's a Mexican national.
Pues, mira, yo puedo decir eso. El nivel de ofensa aquí es lo más serio, lo más grave que nosotros tenemos, como dice el señor Dillon, ¿ok? Y por eso hay una lista de abogados que la mayoría son de Houston, que tienen la experiencia de esos clases de casos. El señor Oso tiene 40 años, la señora Andrews tiene 25 años. 65 años cumplidos, total. Y ellos son fiscales tan buenos, ambos, both of them, son buenas abogados. So, el nivel de representación que él tiene no sería mejor, es lo mejor que nosotros tenemos.
Nombre y apellido.
¿Dónde aprendió?
Su nombre y apellido.
Oh, Roberto Freire, F-E-Y-E-R. Oficial de hablador español del condado de San Jacinto.
El fiscal.
He sneaks up on everybody.